Hello and welcome back to yet another episode of Still in Beta, your podcast that deals with all the beta products in the flight simulation world. My name is Roman, and with me are Sean and William. Hello.
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 How are you guys?
Pretty good, I'd say. Yeah.
Yeah, very good.
Simulator still running?
Currently.
Just about.
You're the lucky ones. I mean, mine is just about coming back to a working state, and I mean both of them. Both. And this is our topic for this week: simulator maintenance and repair.
You certainly had your fair share of it this week, haven't you?
Oh, yes, I did. And that's my problem with it. It feels like a full-time job at times, and I'm not kidding. I really spent like whole days trying to figure this out.
I suppose it's not a matter of a beta product.
No, it's not so much, but sometimes the entire flight simulation world feels like a beta product, and it goes back to what he said last week. The flight simulator is one big box where you put lots of little boxes inside of.
Yes, I have lots of little boxes. Too many little boxes. And then sometimes they don't all fit together.
Yeah, far too many, and they definitely don't all fit together all the time.
That makes simulator maintenance a bit hard. You think of your simulator as, the game you play, and then everything is a bit of an add-on. Well, in reality, it's more like your simulator, P3D, DCS, X-Plane, whatever, is basically the operating system of your sky, of your virtual sky. It provides the world. It comes with a few planes, but let's be honest, most of us use some fancier planes like Flight Factor or PMDG or something like that. And at least in the PMDG manual, they're very clear about this, that the actual simulator you're using is their product in a bigger box that just provides the world. So they don't really see P3D as the simulator anymore. They see the plane as the simulator, which is fine. It only gets more and more complicated when you have a lot of elements in your simulator. And I'm pretty sure most of us have more than one add-on. I mean, you guys have like a million or so?
Yes, they do have a tendency to collect over the years, don't they?
Exactly.
I mean, I've only had my current setup since end of last year, and I feel like I've already gathered a lot of trinkets along the way.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Some to make things better, some to make things look better. Yeah, quite a few different
Some to
things.
make things a lot worse as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and that worse makes everything worse. And I planned this episode to just rant for an hour and scream into the microphone until everybody gets my point and is super annoyed, but nobody will learn anything from that. So I prepared a little list of do's and don'ts I follow in my own trying to keep everything stable and what to do if things do go wrong, both in P3D and X-Plane. I'm also a DCS user, but honestly, with DCS, I think it's more like, you have one simulator, one plane. It's not that difficult to debug. Might be wrong about that. So if you use DCS and if you have trouble, maybe leave some comments. Would be much appreciated because I'm just starting out in that world. Last week's problem essentially came down to one faulty plugin that had an update. I want to touch on this as a bit of a still in beta thing because not every time you look at a product, may it be free, may it be payware, you get that sense that it could be incompatible with what you already got. Like if you buy a particular piece of weather plugin, for example, it might not tell you, yeah, if you use this with some aircraft, yeah, a specific aircraft weather plugin example I have in my mind is if you have Ultra Weather XP for X-Plane, version 2.5, I don't know about 2.6 because it's Vulkan, and if you use the IXEG XAG 737, these two things don't go together. I never found anything about that anywhere until I actually put them together and I saw that the entire world just weirdly turned gray. It took me a while to figure out that it was the weather plugin. Actually, I fiddled around with that for 2 hours or something. And therein lays my biggest gripe in terms of maintenance. It is so hard to figure out what is the cause of your problem. You know you have a problem, but oftentimes you are either the only person in the world who has this specific problem, or you just can't find a solution that fits or that works for you. You just left stranded and you need to figure it out. And it's very hard.
Well, that does seem to be becoming an increasing problem with developers and flight sim. As things develop on, we seem to spend time fixing things, tinkering away with the settings, less time actually behind the controls, getting to actually fly the plane. That's, I guess, all part of the fun of the hobby that we all seem to have this love-hate relationship with.
Sometimes more hate than love, and if it turns so toxic that
You last
you,
week.
yeah, I mean, last week I was ready to just throw the machine
mean-
out of the window, and that would probably have killed somebody who was walking by. I mean, that's probably
we
just the
have-
only thing that stopped me.
We have promised to unleash you this week to the viewers, so we
But I try to be constructive and, try to have good ideas for both our listeners and maybe a developer who listens in and think like, oh, could be a good idea.
it would be great if we could actually have some impact on the developer. Actually, might say, take word of it. That would be great.
Obviously, it would be great. And the first thing every developer could do for us is have a custom log, or at least leave some footprint in there in the explain log. Which plugin was it that caused your simulator to crash? Because when you have a problem with your simulator, it often crashes. You have no idea why. In explain, at least you can open the log and you might see a hint to what caused it. And some hints say, okay, it has been a plugin, it could be the plane or something like that. And you can go from there. You can surgically remove bits and pieces and figure out, does this problem still happen? So it's easier. But with P3D FSX, I found it really impossible to use any kind of logging information. Because even if you find that log, and I have to hunt these logs down every time. I completely forgot where they are. Windows, another topic. Once you find a log, it's basically always the same error code, which says 0x and then some hexadecimal number. And it's usually the same number, and that number can mean anything from your keyboard just sent me the wrong key to your system's hard drive is on fire. It literally means everything.
Like to narrow it down.
No, it doesn't narrow it down at all. And in terms of flight simulation, I remember I had this problem a lot with P3D V2 and V3 when it was a bit less stable than it is with V4 and probably V5. And the thing is, you look for that code and you think like, oh yeah, I found the error number. There must be something, some known problem, and you probably end up in some developer's forum and you can probably narrow it down that way. And you end up, it shows up on Aerosoft, it shows up on PMDG, it shows up on FSIM, completely unrelated issues with products you don't even have, and you figure out this problem is literally everything that can go wrong. Everything has the same number. So having some sort of custom log would be extremely helpful in order to figure things out. And that's my first wish, that we see this in the future more and more, that add-on developers will do their own logs, that simulators get better logging, that error codes are very unique, and that you can really look for it on the internet and say, okay, yeah, this is my problem, so how do I fix it? Stuff like that. We can only live in hope, yeah. So that's for our how to do it better in general. Another good advice to developers is, please do care a little bit, because I recently had a problem after an update. We get to upgrades in a moment. I posted a bug report and I was like, okay, here's the log, here is everything I did, the route I flew, all of these things, and how long it takes until the entire thing just explodes. They didn't even look at it, I think. I think they just don't care. It was a Flight Factor product, just in case you want to know. And I eventually figured it out. It was a problem with their plane. Some file that didn't even need to be there, really, just couldn't be read. I don't know what's wrong with it. I was able to delete it and get rid of the error, and then eventually it got closed like, oh yeah, it's self-solved. I'm like, it's not really solved. I mean, the file is still there if you update it. And yeah, it felt like, oh yeah, this guy has no more problems, so let's forget about him. Even if they even look at it. And that brings me back to yet another thing, another Flight Factor product, because apparently the entire plane just is completely wrong, and you lay out the problems with complete details and everything. And a month later, nobody responds to it from the developer side. Even so, other pilots have responded and said, yep, same problem here. No response.
Seems to be a bit of a hit and miss with Flight Factor, because I know that they do some really great products.
All the products are pretty great, but if you have a problem with them, support isn't all that great. And that's just something other developers have nailed down really well. I mean, in other forums, you go in and they say, well, I have this and this problem, and hours later, that's quicker than I would ever expect it. They come along and say, "Oh yeah, you need to do this or that," or "Yeah, we've seen it and we'll try to fix it," or something, and they actually do it.
I think it's a really of buying, downloading a. It's not just going trouble of creating it, developing it, producing it, and releasing it, but also going the extra mile to provide the aftercare. And like you say, some companies do it really well, and other companies just don't seem to care. Once they've got your money, they're not bothered. If it's not working product, whatever, we don't care. It's your problem. And they just don't seem to want to actually come back and help and fix the problem. And that just makes things even more frustrating for everybody. In particular, if you spent a considerable amount of money on a particular product, you may have been saving up for.
It's not just the amount of money you put into it, it's also the amount of time.
Oh yeah,
You spend a lot of time in the maintenance areas of your simulator, and that's just something, as you say, comes with the hobby. But I mean, I am working in IT and I find it difficult at times. How does a normal person who just uses a computer for fun, maybe, and some internet browsing, deal with these problems? I mean, sometimes people might just give up completely and forget about the product, even though it might just be a really easy fix, but you'll never find a solution because you don't get a hint. And you basically are just stranded with a simulator that keeps on crashing all the time.
I don't know if it's just me, but I feel like as the years have gone by, simulation has kind of become more complicated. I mean, I seem to recall the early days of Flight Simulator 2004, where you bought a product, you installed it, it all worked, there was never any problems with it, and then you just moved on. And like now, it just seems to be almost a constant battle sometimes. Maybe it's just me. Maybe things were just bad that long ago, but I was just too young and naive to really care or understand, and didn't really bother getting involved in it too much. I don't know. I just feel like as time has gone on, I seem to spend more and more time with the toolbox out, going, I don't know what's wrong with this file, but clearly something is wrong because the plane's missing a wing, or it doesn't have any engines or something.
That's a surefire indicator that there's something wrong, yeah. But these are not even examples that are made up. These are issues, no engines and stuff like that, or the gear missing. We've seen that.
Well, if you look back at 2004, even FSX times when that came out, the internet wasn't what it is today. It wasn't so easily accessible for someone to get something and download it in 5 minutes. 150 meg file, you download it in 5 minutes or whatever it is, and you're good to go. So I think developers back then had to make something that was solid, verified to work. It wasn't so easy to beta test back then. It wasn't so easy to grab things and send it to somebody. And so they beta tested it probably a lot more before they released it. And they released it in a working state. And really, that goes back to many things back then that you bought on a CD and you installed it and it worked. And there was probably no chance of an update back then. Maybe they would release a bug fix and it would be a 30 meg file with dial up and it would take you 3 days to download it. But now, if you look at it, they can easily put something on the internet that's a gig or an airplane or whatever it might be. You can download it in a few minutes, generally, depending on your internet connection, install it, have problems with it, and then they can take the feedback, which they can get instantly based on forums and various platforms in which they can, or even error bugs that can be transmitted through the program itself. There, you can submit a bug through X-Plane or even some of the aircraft themselves, where you can submit the log, and it all can be done very quickly. And then they can release an update, which could be small or big, and then you can download it within a couple minutes again and be back in business. So I think the idea that releasing something fully working without a problem isn't necessarily the goal anymore. It's getting it out there, getting it beta tested, finding the problem, and then submit, and fixing it. But
And
I
charging
just,
the
of course, but
update.
I mean, just look back at all the games you would buy back in the 2004, 2006 era, as I think that's when FSX came out, was 2006. If you look back at that time, it wasn't so easy to do what we're doing today. The X-Plane store, I don't know if it existed back then, and I only say X-Plane store because there's really no P3D equivalent, I suppose. The X-Plane store, you can buy any aircraft, any scenery, and it's all downloadable. They don't ship it to you. There's no CD to send to you. You have to download it. That wasn't available back then. So I think things have just, the way in which the platform we operate on has changed so much in the last 10 years, 15 years, and greatly changed. Not
Oh
just
yeah,
simply.
we complain, we moan, but it is ultimately a lot easier and a lot a lot more simple to get content to your computer. Flight sim.
I think it's just created its own issues in the process of I don't have to make sure this is working perfectly. I can just send it out and people will tell me if it's not working and I'll go back and fix it. I own goodness, I think it was called Mega Scenery X, really big for FSX back in the day. Now I'm gonna take you all back a little bit. For those of you who are young, I went to the store and bought that. I went to I want to say it was a Best Buy. This is a long time ago. In in the game section, they had in CD form or DVD, I can't remember, an add-on scenery for FSX next to FSX. I mean, think about that for a second. You go to the store, you could probably not even find a flight sim at a store anymore. Most stores don't even carry computer games anymore, or it's very little. They don't even carry much computer software because most of it's available to download quickly.
Yeah.
But so they released something on disc. They published it on a disc and put it in stores. When you do that back then, particularly because goodness gracious, downloading an entire Phoenix because it was the Phoenix Mega Scenery X, downloading that on the internet connections back then was, I mean, it would have taken you forever even if possible to get it to your computer. Now that they've gotten away from that, it's available instantly. You can download it, and there's a problem, they'll fix it. But back then, they had to release it working because it was on disk, and you didn't have an option to download it. And I think that's what's kind of changed and led to these bug issues that seem to crop up more these days than they ever did back then. And on top of that, you've got so many developers in the game these days versus back then, whether it be P3D or Xpoint, it doesn't matter. There's so many different developers now making different things that eventually there's going to be a conflict because they're not all operating on the same wavelength, I guess. So the conflicts are going to be there. Perfect example is the Flight Factor 757 not working with a reshade program for X-Plane. In my mind, that doesn't make any sense. Why is it a reshade program I have to change and add a little bit of color and depth to a flight sim causing an aircraft not to work? And I sat there for days trying to figure that out until I finally submitted the bug report to Flight Factor, and they came back, oh yeah, it's your reshade program. We know about it. It causes a problem, causes to crash the desktop. How? How is that even possible? But it is for some reason.
Yeah, it's very interesting problems we come across at times that make no sense in our minds, because if you're not familiar with Reshade, it's a program that post processes your image. So by the time Reshade gets the image to do its magic, it has already been rendered by the simulator. The simulator is out of the game by now. So I don't really know why that would even be an issue. I'm sure there's a perfectly good reason. I just can't make it out right now. Just the same with you.
Yeah, you're right. And I'm not a developer. I don't know how to make a reshade program or an airplane, so I can't say why there's a problem. The funny thing is, though, is it's still a problem. Why is it still a problem? They know about it. Still in beta.
Still in beta.
Of course.
And I'm sure you're not the
You're right.
only Reshade user, so yeah. I did
Well,
try.
I'm not anymore.
Yeah, same thing here. I had other problems, but I essentially said, nah, this whole Reshade thing, it looks good, but honestly, it's more work than it's worth. And yeah, less is more, which is actually the first point on my list of how to improve things. Less is really more. I highly suggest if you're building your simulator, next time you build your simulator, and oh god, that's like a multi-week process, especially if you're in P3D. You install the simulator, then you're busy for a good week, if not two, with all your add-ons to be installed, to be re-downloaded, to be this, to be that. And it really takes a long time to get it to this state where you have everything installed and ready to go. I mean, everything. It's not like you can't fly before, but really, it takes a long time. A sort of unified installation would be great, but I get the point why this doesn't work at the moment.
Could be 2020.
Could be 2020. It has its own problems if everything comes from the same source, but okay, let's not get in there. Let's just say less is more. When you install your simulator from scratch, which is something we all do at some point eventually anyway, go and build something that is stable for you. Meaning, just a simulator, an aircraft you know is pretty stable. If you have a PMDG 747 or something around, use that, because at least for me, that's probably the most stable plane in the game. Or the 777, same thing.
Yeah, I would say the 74 is pretty stable, and also the 737 NGXU. You know, it has a bit of a frame hit, which is supposedly known about. Whether anything's going to be, I don't know. But yeah, the 747 certainly it's very stable. I never seem to have any issues with it.
Yeah, same thing with frames. Make sure that your stable configuration is sort of your baseline. That's where you get like your 60 frames or something to begin with, because once you install scenery and stuff, it will get worse. But then do half a flight with it at least. Fly around a little bit in this world, no scenery, no nothing, and see to it that everything works. Because if that particular configuration blows up, then something is wrong either with your flight simulator directly or the PMDG. It's just two products you can choose from. The more stuff you add, the more difficult it is to figure out what's wrong, especially in P3D where you have practically no logging. I mean, I ended up doing a complete installation of all my things, and then it constantly crashed. And I threw this entire thing away and slowly rebuilt it. Eventually, I ended up with the same setup, I guess, but everything worked. I don't know why. Sometimes it works and you just have to accept it works, and I'm happy to. So always start small, go for a stable configuration, which you can return to every time something goes wrong. So your stable configuration grows with you. You essentially just add sceneries and more planes and, use that. Have like maximum one maintenance day a week or something if you really have, a lot of maintenance going on. And every time you change something, at least keep a mental note what you did. If you installed a new scenery and your flight simulator crashes, get rid of that scenery. And if it doesn't crash anymore, then it's really easy to find.
No, that's your problem.
I broke that rule kind of when I did multiple upgrades at one go, and upgrades are another problem. As you say, it's good that we get these upgrades. We have so much more. I mean, developers have more leeway to come up with a half-baked product or product that misses features. Quite often they say, okay, this is still missing. We'll add this later. And it lowers the barrier of entry for developers. I get that. But once you start upgrading, I mean, for example, the PMDG upgrades are not too difficult. Thank goodness they're not anymore. You just run their operations center, which is horrific, absolutely horrific, especially version 2. I don't know what they're thinking about this thing. It's terror.
Interestingly, that is the one problem I have with PMDG, is the operations center, but that appears to be connected to something unrelated to Flight Simulator in the fact that my computer's driver updates seem to interfere with PMDG, and for some reason it decides to say that the planes no longer exists in my sim, and then I have to reinstall it all again, which is slightly annoying. But
yeah, well, the reinstalling part is what gets to me. I mean, I have no problem with the PMDG center once it's running and it did its thing in like painstakingly slow manner. I really don't know what they were thinking about this tool. Anyway, so this one does the updates for you. But if you take a plane like the FS Labs A320 series, at least the earlier versions, I think now you have a way to keep the config files at least. But no, I think I lose my config every single time, and it is really annoying because I reconfigured it so that I can read the displays a little better. I changed the colors ever so slightly to make sure I can read them. So I have to change that file after every upgrade. Then I have to change my state file and that I want my certain keyboard settings and whatever. I mean, if you don't change anything, you're good, but many people might change something, and every time you need to uninstall the product first and then reinstall it. So every update adds a lot of extra work because you need to reset it up. Similar thing, I think, for the quality wings. At least I had this problem. I had to reinstall the old one, and then everything was gone. My liveries were gone. My entire setup was basically gone.
It's just so frustrating.
Updates are so frequent, you have to go with them, essentially, because your simulator upgrades, your tools might upgrade and force you to upgrade. Oh, okay. Let's not open that yet. And your planes need upgrades so that everything works together. Yeah. And one thing, I mean, P3D itself, I've always followed the official upgrade installation thing on their forum, which says all you need to do is uninstall the client, do not change the activation code or anything. Fine, did that. And reinstalled the client. That seemed to work just fine. But over time, things started to fall apart. Most notably, I looked at the PMDG 747 and I was like, why are the engines black? Like literally, I mean, not black, but parts of them were like really weird. And I had no idea what was going on. I was looking at the plane itself. I reinstalled the plane. I did all of this. Obviously, I lost all my liveries again, so I had to do all of that again. Eventually, I figured out, well, every now and then it is a good idea to update their content package as well, which wasn't necessarily something you would easily find. But through like many searches on the internet, you find the right forums and the darkest corner of the internet, and you're like,
Uh-huh.
oh, I see. So you need to actually upgrade the whole P3D every now and then. So that's what I did, and eventually the problem went away. But this kept me busy for at least, I mean, not full time, obviously, but every time I wanted to do a flight, I said, well, let's try and fix this. Let's try and fix this. So before you do the flight, you're busy for an hour or two trying to fix this, and then you give up and fly with these sort of blackish engines and hope you do figure it out at some point. It's just things upgrade, things fall apart. That's something we didn't have in the past. As you said, you went to a store, you basically were stuck with the product with all its problems.
It generally worked.
For once, actually upgrade is not always the good thing. It can sometimes send shivers down your spine, especially in the flight sim world.
Yeah, so what I highly recommend is not to upgrade during certain times and to certain versions. First, Sean, this is for you. Do not upgrade to beta versions of X-Plane.
I'll stop you right there because I won't have any of that. There was a glitch in my Steam that created it to download, or that allowed it to download the beta version, and then I couldn't get out of the beta version. The only thing I could do was turn Vulkan off, which fixed most of my issues until it just started compounding. Because first it started with the Flight Factor 320 not working, and then the Tolise not having sound, and then the 747 from SSG didn't work properly.
Well, that's
Vulkan
normal.
on, and then it just started cascading till I was left with no airplanes. Somehow something happened and allowed me to revert back to a non-beta version. That wasn't my fault, but yes, I would agree with you. Avoid that. It's one thing to jump on a X-Plane beta, I think. It's a whole nother thing when they're changing the entire way they do graphics. That just caused all kinds of issues. So I would agree with you. Definitely don't use give the beta some time to mature before you want to jump onto that.
You see, that's definitely my rule. Whenever, and this doesn't just go for, this goes for even just individual add-on updates. Whenever there's an update, I'll leave it a good couple of weeks before I get around to doing it. I'll wait for everyone else to get in there and find out what all the problems are first, and then I'll decide whether it's good enough or worthwhile me upgrading to it, or I'll wait for them to fix it again.
Very good strategy, and definitely, even if something is stable, let's say at the moment P3D V5 is the new hot thing. I'm personally not very interested in it, but that has different reasons. Even if I was, with V4 was the same thing. I didn't upgrade until it was like 4.1, 4.2 something. I mean, yeah, you're probably missing out on all the quote-unquote fun early adopters have, but a lot of that fun just involves things not working, and you just wait until it's ready for you to go. And unless you have a lot of time and you actually want to contribute to the beta, fine. But I highly recommend do not go into beta products and like early versions. That's just usually as good as beta. Like the final beta versions, release candidates, if you like.
It's probably also worth taking a look at what is actually included in the update. So this is probably more related to a scenery or an aircraft. Actually take a look to see what's being done, because maybe what's being done is just the addition of something in there that actually you don't really want or need, and it might not necessarily be worth all your time and effort upgrading to it just for the sake of having like an electronic flight bag, for example, if it's something you're not going to be bothered about.
Exactly.
And if what you've got is stable, you might as well stick with what you've got. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. That's definitely my motto.
Doesn't necessarily apply to everything, but let's say in the flight simulator we can say if it really works for you, don't touch it. Unfortunately, it doesn't always work like that either. There is a program out there called Chaseplane. It's a camera control for P3D, because the one in P3D I find completely unusable.
Yeah, it's not very good.
Yeah, Chaseplane fixes this. It makes P3D very nice. The problem with it is, since Orbex bought it, or this became part of Orbex somehow, it forces you to upgrade. And I don't know why. This program has one job to do, really. I mean, it can do more than just one job, but for me it has one job. Make the camera controls work. I don't care if it's the latest version or not. I just want it to work. Now, normally how this works, I start P3D, it starts in the background. No problem, it just runs. It can happen every now and then that it crashes. That's okay, I just restart it manually, can do this during the flight, and everything's good. Every so often, though, they release an upgrade you have to upgrade to. Again, I don't understand why. The program starts along with P3D, works for a few moments, and then it crashes, and you assume, oh, it crashed, so you restart it, it works for a minute or two, and then it crashes again. And you keep forgetting that this is probably because it asks the server, is there an upgrade? It doesn't tell you, oh, there's an upgrade. You have to install the upgrade because insert reason here, whatever it is.
Oh, that's frustrating.
Then you try to figure out what's wrong. You restart your computer. You think about, oh, where do I have the installer for that thing? Until you figure out, yeah, now it's Orbex. And so half an hour is easily gone just restarting the simulator 2 times or 3 times or whatever, and you get nowhere. And this is my problem. You're ready to go. You have it all planned. You're looking forward to your flight, and then this tiny little program, which is really, I mean, sorry, all it does is one job. It doesn't need the upgrade right now. And if there is an upgrade, just tell me, okay, there is an upgrade. Please, would you like to upgrade next time you start the simulator or something? That's fine. Just don't kill the flight right there. And if this happens to 1,000 people, that's half an hour, maybe an hour, 1,000 times. Seriously. There's a lot of time wasted looking for this because I don't open my Orbex Direct Updater Center every time before I start a flight. I mean, literally, this is what they think you do, but I don't. I don't want Orbex upgrades. Once it's installed, it's there. I might want to upgrade every year or so. That's fine.
It's not like Orbex to force something on you.
That, if you can catch it, was a joke.
Yeah. Because of course every product that they offer tends to require 28 different products to make it work.
And then it doesn't end there. It didn't end there. No, then I finally figured out, oh yes, wonderful. Now I can go flying. And then I start chase plane, and it comes to me, oh yeah, you also need to install some weird Microsoft Visual something. Okay, let's do this. Oh yeah, and then you need to back up this and that. I said, I just want to fly. I didn't fly that day because I was so annoyed by all of these things. Just this little thing just ruined it completely for the day. And actually, I was miserable for 2 days after that. I mean, just come on. It is not necessary to go there. Just tell me, there's an upgrade. Would you like to do it after the flight, maybe?
Now, you see, GSX has kind of the right way to go about this, actually. Because GSX does quite a lot of updates, but it will tell you when you start your flight sim. It will pop up a message to say, oh, there's an update. You can either run the update, ignore the update, or check what's in them. So at least they're letting you know, hey, there's an update. We'll keep telling you there's an update, but, do it when you feel like it. Don't do it when you feel like it. Which is quite good, because then you can just ignore that update and carry on with your flight.
Exactly.
And there's times where I've even forgotten about it for like 2 or 3 weeks, and then I've gone, oh, I'll probably should do all that and update it. But that's the right way to go about it. GSX is saying, yeah, look, there is a problem. There's a fix. There's an update here. Do it when you feel like it.
Exactly. I like it when things work like this. I mean, we had the same problem with a forced upgrade during the beta phase of the Flight Factor A320. I was just ready to go, and it tells me, you have to update to your version now. And you're like, what? Why?
For God's sake.
Yeah. I mean, this time is over. I even complained about that to Flight Factor, and they basically attacked me. Like, yeah, you're in beta. You have to update this. I'm like, I thought we were out of beta by now because we're no longer in the beta forum. So anyway, it's not.
Nothing ever leaves beta.
It officially left beta, so if they now tell me I need to update to the latest beta, I will be very angry, but they will not care, as usual.
It's likely that they will feature in a future episode if something comes out in beta. They will land themselves on our list.
Well, so pretty much everything comes onto our list. Okay, so that was my beta advice. Do not go for beta versions of your simulator. Do not go for beta versions of your products. I mean, it's fine if you know what you're getting into. But there are many beta programs I thought about doing in both X-Plane and P3D and said no. Same for FS 2020 Alpha. I don't even want to get in. I never applied. I'm keen to see it, but I want to see the sort of final product. I don't care for the Alpha because I do not have the time to contribute at the level I want to contribute. So that's
fair.
my thought about betas. If you want to contribute your feedback, obviously also have the fun and be one of the cool kids who has screenshots of the beta product or whatever. That's fine. Just don't expect it to work.
I think it's important here that at least it says it's an alpha.
Yeah, you don't expect it to work, honestly.
I'm surprised they didn't just release it and say, here it is, and it's still an alpha, by the way.
No, that wouldn't build a
Yeah,
hype train.
Well, it's
And,
Microsoft, so anything's possible in the future.
I do think it's important, though, that if you're using something in beta, particularly if it's actually supposed to be in beta, that you provide your feedback, particularly alpha. You're part of the development process. I think it's important that you provide that feedback as opposed to just using it and saying, "Meh, it's whatever," or "Yeah, this is great," or "No, it's not," and not saying anything. And maybe it'll curb some of the issues that we were talking about, where it gets released and it breaks something, and then now you got the hood up on your flight sim trying to figure out why it's not working. Just some thought, I suppose.
Yeah, if you're in an alpha or beta program, your feedback can make the difference between many hours lost and a good experience.
Yeah.
My next advice would be, if you're an X-Plane user, it is very, very tempting to go for all of these plugins that are out there, like Headshake and this and that and that and this. These plugins are poison at times. I'm not saying that they're all terrible.
There does seem to be a plugin for every occasion.
Yeah, my last week's problem with X-Plane eventually came down to a little plugin that does terrain radar, and it is suggested by the ERJ series from Xcrafts. So I installed the ERJ series and I installed that plugin because it said, well, it's an option, but if you do it, you have ground radar, which I thought was a good idea. And it always worked fine until I had to upgrade that. So it's now version 1.20 or something. And the simulator crashed. And the problem was I didn't just add that, I added other things. And so eventually I just broke my own rule and said, I don't know which my stable state was before. So I had to kind of guess which one it was. And it was not just this plane. At first I thought, oh, maybe the plane is bugged. But then I switched planes. Same problem. Even so, these planes didn't even use that plugin. I eventually just read the log every time the simulator crashed. I knew it was a plugin. I removed plugins I had an inkling about that. Could be that, could be this. Nothing worked. Eventually, I figured out every time it crashes, it tries to read some global scenery file. I was like, wait a sec, there is this weird terrain radar plugin. Get rid of. Oh, solved all my problems. But it doesn't tell you, oh, last thing I tried was giving you a terrain radar map or something. You have to guess these things, which is really hard. So with X-Plane plugins, I say, yes, you get some idea that it was a plugin, but it doesn't tell you which one. And if you don't need a plugin, try to live without it. If you really want it, add it and nothing but that one plugin. Do not change anything. No scenery, no planes, no plugins, most of all. And just try it. If it doesn't crash, you're good. If it does crash, which sometimes it does, I mean, I know, Sean, you have this Headshake plugin. I remember in the past it just gave me many CDTs, so I completely forgot about it and never touched it again.
See, I've never had problems with Headshake or really any plugins that I can recall, other than when my X-Plane hijacked and do the Vulcan, which then everything stopped working. But I would agree that it's really easy because I'll when people get X-Plane, I'll send them a list of plugins that I would recommend for. I do like the Headshake; it adds a little bit more realism, better pushback, and all these little things that you kind of need or want to make it to make it the way it should be and to begin with. I will send that list to somebody, and they will download the entire list and install it all at once. That is the only problem, because if there is a version that they downloaded that I don't have, because I don't update my plugins unless it's absolutely necessary.
Yeah.
For the reason of don't want to find out what's going to happen. They install them all, and then suddenly something stops working. I don't know how to trouble it. Well, it's working for me, but at the same time, I also have a stable version that I'm working with. So one at a time, at the very least. If you want them, great. If, like Roman said, if you can live without them, it will maybe help your frame rate out a little bit, or maybe it'll help performance out, or crash the desktops. But if you're going to put them in, put one in at a time. You can download them all, one in at a time. Load up your sim, make sure everything works. Particularly that of payware aircraft. I would even recommend it take you a little bit longer, but just go through all your aircraft, reload them real quick, and make sure that whatever you put in doesn't make that aircraft stop working.
Very good idea.
Yeah, very good. I think we're all guilty of sort of getting new things and just installing them all at once. But I mean, I don't think any of us can stress it enough. Don't install multiple things at once. You've got to install them bit by bit, and then least that way you can see how stable things are, or what if something's broke, you then know that it's potentially what you've just added. So one at a time, guys, one at a time.
Exactly. And another good thing to remember is it's not just your simulator bits, it can also be your graphics driver. If you have some automated upgrade system there for your graphics driver to be the latest and greatest every time, which is not a good idea, by the way, it could very well break your simulator. And if you just happen to install something new and your graphics driver is the cause of your problem, you will never find that issue until the next upgrade is released, and then all of a sudden it might or might not work. It's a very intricate network. One thing builds on the next, builds on the next, builds on the next, and if one thing in this chain is broken, in this case P3D or X-Plane or whatever, they don't work together very well, you might never find out. That's just a big problem. And I highly recommend do turn off your automated graphics driver update, because honestly, it doesn't really add anything other than support for new cards and sometimes like major things, but you usually will know about them if you really need them. So why upgrade the graphics drivers like every 2 weeks? It's just not necessary.
In fact, that's a very good point, and it's actually something that I should probably do, because I think that's the problem that I'm having with my updates, causing my PMDG operations center to basically say I no longer have the planes installed, even though they're there and they work. But it just means I can't install any more liveries, sift through anything.
I have a quick
And I
question
have
in
to
regards to
install
that.
everything. Yeah.
So eventually, I probably have to buy PMDG if 2020 is a success. Why? Why is there some program to install liveries? I don't get it. Like, I think if you compare flight sims, it's easier to install liveries on X-Plane than it is in P3D
Oh,
or
yes.
FSX. There's an install process, it seems, with P3D and FSX. With X-Plane, you just drag a folder into another folder and you're done. If X-Plane got anything right, they got that right. It's just so simple to even drag an airplane in, drag it out if you're having problems. There's no uninstall install process, which I hate installing stuff into my flight sim. Much prefer just to
Amen.
drag and drop it. I don't want anybody installing any sort of registry stuff or whatever, because it just makes troubleshooting that much harder. And we all know when you uninstall a program, it doesn't necessarily ever uninstall completely. But my question is what's the deal with the PMDG? What did you call it? The Operations Center?
Operations Center. So it's basically when you download. So they have on their operations center, they have a list of liveries that are essentially either created by them or like trusted supporters. So they put them on there, and you can click through the various aircraft types you have, and you just literally click install, and it will install a livery for you. It takes 2 or 3 seconds. But also, if you download any liveries that people make, so like for instance, like when we download liveries from Metro Air, or if you download things from third-party places like AvSim or FlightSim.com, it creates what's called a PTP file. Basically, all you do is you go into the operation center to install the PTP file from that list, and again, that then just takes a few seconds, and then you can uninstall them just as easily. But also, that's the operation center runs the updates for the particular product. So if they move to a different version or there's a bug fix or something, then it will tell you in the operation center.
This is
Mm,
just PMDG for you. I mean, there are other
Oh
products
yeah,
like Quality Wings or Aerosoft A320 series and so on. They have their own version of this. So you have already 3
yes,
different tools for this. And
yeah,
okay, I give Aerosoft that now this tool for deliveries is unified. Before you had an A320 livery manager, and it could either be 1819 or 2021. You never knew which one you would get because they had
yeah.
the same name. But now it's unified, so I give him that, let him pass. The thing is, you have already 3 different systems for that. And then there's Flight Sim Labs, which actually made it very good. They have a similar situation to X-Plane. You have a folder, you drop your livery into, and it will automatically pick it up and say, oh yeah, that's a configuration, it's right in there. So it will rebuild the aircraft's configuration file based on that. So that's one solution, but that's 4 different solutions for the same problem. And it is actually difficult to add a livery by hand. I mean, it's not really, really difficult, but there are several steps involved that include an editor. And to be honest, unless you have like Notepad++ or something installed in your system, Windows doesn't have an editor. And I'm not talking about WordPad or anything like that. That's a word processor. That's a complete different can of things.
Worms.
Yeah, worms. No, a text editor. text editor. You don't have a very good one. You might as well just mess things up because some weird characters you can't even see are not compatible with the file or something. So anyway, you then have to copy and paste a piece of text in there, change a number in that, and if you mess that up, you might just, let's just say there are too many steps involved for the regular user who never has done this before to do this comfortably. As you say, in X-Plane, it's a library folder, you drag and drop and it's there. It hasn't always been like that, but it's now. So that's good. P3D and FSX, it's complicated. That's why these tools exist. I get it, but there's again no unified way of doing this, even so the baseline is unified. It's always the same kind of configuration, but the process is a different one every single time.
And it's not just limited to aircraft, it's also sceneries as well. I mean, I've just literally counted on my desktop as we've been discussing this, and I can count 12 files or 12 programs that I have on my desktop which are specifically related to either aircraft installations and updates or scenery updates and third-party add-on updates. And there's actually, I can think of at least 2 or 3 others that I don't have an icon on the desktop for. And that's all just for various sceneries and airplanes that I have.
Yeah, I think it would look the same if I wouldn't delete them every time. I mean,
Yeah.
I still keep record that they are there and I run them every now and then, but I don't leave them on the desktop. The desktop would be full. I would need a 4K monitor
Yeah.
just for upgrades.
Well, my desktop, the entire thing is full, and of course, on top of all that, you've then got like your weather programs and your your clients for VATSIM and sim toolkits and things like that.
Yeah, that's another thing. You need so many little extra tools, like as you say, for the weather. You might use
Yeah.
Active Sky or something. So that's an extra program. In the past, it was so bad. I mean, past had other advantages, but back then it was impossible to run all of this on one computer. So I essentially had to spread out to 3. Now it runs on 1, but it is still like you have all of these programs you needed for FS9. You still need them, kind of. It's just so many blocks that need to work together. And if one of them fails, your entire experience kind of falls apart. Like, as I said, chase plane. It's a block that just sits there and I never really pay attention after I set it up. And all of a sudden it fails and it ruins your entire day. I mean, if you're that much of an addict as I am.
And Roman, this could be a good point to point out a particular third-party add-on whose control panel is really one of the worst I've come across and the most complicated to use. The Majestic Q400.
I wanted to ask you, does it have a
That
propeller?
control panel is horrendous. I mean, I think you all need a degree in physics to be able to get that airplane in the air.
Well, I was able to get it into the air lately, and I'm very, very proud of myself that I managed to get there. But I did end up in a meltdown.
You were completely frustrated by the time you got to 16,000 feet and closed it down.
Yes, exactly. What pushed me over the edge was essentially a sound issue, which again had to do with chase plane. It is known to the developer. There are hot fixes, but these fixes are not included in the package you buy or download from SimMarket. So I had no idea these things existed. And it took me a while to figure that out. Now the sound thing works. I might give this plane another go, but it has other issues. As you say, this
Yes.
control panel with lots of numbers.
Lots of numbers, lots of spreadsheets, calculators required, and then you've got to calculate everything manually because they didn't bother to include anything in that on the plane.
Yeah.
And then, of course, once you've done all of that, it'll take you 4 hours to get to the runway because you can't taxi the thing.
Yeah, this is a completely different episode about developers sort of missing out on things. There's a certain word I want to use, but let's just stick to missing out on things that could make simulation a bit more desktop friendly, where we kind of live. That's not really anything about the maintenance itself, but you're right. Some of these programs, I personally hate the PMDG Center, for example, because in part because they made such a big deal about it. At the, what was it called? You were actually there in Las Vegas. The
Flight Sim Convention.
Flight
yeah,
Sim
Flight Sim
Convention,
Convention. A, it still doesn't do what they said it would do. B, if that is the basis of that thing that's supposed to do all of these things, I can't see anybody using it without being frustrated every so often, if not all the time.
That's just another developer, and even the developers that we kind of praise quite a lot, like PMGG,
Oh,
they're
love
not
them.
completely perfect, and they certainly have their issues further along the lines, and their operations center and the things that go along with it certainly are
Yeah,
right up there with the frustrations that we have.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, what I would just wish for coming out of all this, like, oh, we have so many different tools and this and that. We will not get rid of a lot of these tools, but what would be nice would be a solution to at least have sort of a unification in livery management, a unification in updates, that kind of stuff. And in at least in X-Plane, there is a sort of way towards that. There's a bunch of aircraft that uses certain upgrader plugin. I think the Skunkcraft's upgrader.
Yeah.
I think that's a good tool because you use it basically right in your simulator. You can't have the aircraft loaded you want to upgrade, but still you can just load your simulator up and say check for upgrades, upgrade, and once it's done, it's done. It's a really simple tool. So if we saw more movement towards that unification, maybe FS 2020 will actually force this through some app store. I don't dare really using the word because I'm not a big fan of these app stores, but if I had the choice between I have to spend 2 weeks installing FS 2020 with all its add-ons, and I'm sure there will be add-ons, or I just click a button like in Steam where, let's take The Sims, for example. They have a ton of DLC, and if you had to install this manually, you'll be busy for a while. I remember I did this with older versions, and it was absolute horrible. Now I just click a button, say play. It'll take 2 hours for download and install, and then I play this game. And I never think about the maintenance of it because everything's done for me. And I think that's the essence of a good game, a good gaming experience. I don't want to spend days just trying to figure it out just in order to make it work. And that's where we are with the simulator right now. It is just very complicated. There are very ununified ways of doing things. You have to master almost all of them in order to keep up to date and really just keep on running with the latest and greatest, obviously, but also in order to restore a stable state because it can go away at any time, even so you didn't really touch anything.
So true.
All I can say is keep dreaming.
I have a dream.
I think we'll be dreaming for a long time before something like that ever happens.
Well, I mean, 2020 is around the corner, and we'll see. We'll see. I still think there will be many, many issues waiting for us. New ones, old ones. But at least if we have new ones, we make some sort of progress. Because most of the problems I still face in the flight simulator, I faced in FS9, in X-Plane 8, 9, 10. I don't know. Will X-Plane 12 fix all of them? I don't think.
I doubt it. You never know, though. You might get snow.
Snow would be nice.
I do think 2020 snow is going to be fantastic.
Well, especially for you. You haven't seen snow in like, how long did you use X-Plane 11 now? Few years?
I'd say about a couple of years, yeah.
Yeah, you haven't seen snow in that time.
And I went from FSX to X-Plane. So the snow in FSX was really just white texture, I think they threw on the ground.
I mean, X-Plane users will be so happy with just that.
Yeah, honestly, which is probably what we'll get at first, but we'll see. I don't know, but I do like 2020's snow design that they did, where it kind of accumulates, and that's kind of neat. I like that.
Be able to fly to the east coast of America again in the winter.
Oh yeah, if you fly there now, well, summer now, but in the winter it's summer. It's all the same. You can go to Antarctica, and it's a desert.
It's just luscious green grass as far as the eye.
Actually, a good question. Did you ever go to Antarctica? Was it actually there?
Actually, I don't know. I don't think I've ever been there. I assume it's there. I don't think Metro has service there at the moment, so I haven't flown down there yet.
Okay,
I'll
I
have
see
to
your
look to see
point.
whether we can start direct service.
Yeah.
Well, next week we'll figure out if Antarctica is actually there, because we want to talk about virtual airlines next week, right?
The good,
Yeah.
the bad, the ugly.
The good, the bad,
And
the ugly.
believe it or not, it will tie into being still in beta. Believe it or not.
Oh, I believe every single word because I know what you want to talk about.
Spoiler alert.
Okay, this wraps up our episode on maintenance, at least this part of it, because we may revisit it in sort of a more constructive way, more specialized way of trying to solve questions from you. So if you have any questions about simulator maintenance and maybe a problem you want to fix, maybe we've come across it, maybe not, feel free to ask in the comments anyway. don't forget to like it, to subscribe it. And yeah, next time we'll talk about virtual airlines. We look forward to see you again.
I'd just like to say that I'm amazed how calm you've remained during this. Expecting a lot more.
Oh, my simulator's working. I'm fine.
Well, you'll have to tune in next week for Virtual Airlines, so we'll see you then.
Oh, I will be doing the ranting this time. Thank you.
See you next time.
Goodbye.
See ya.
Bye.